Hi, welcome back to class. And here we are starting back on April Fool's Day. And so now we're moving on to Module 8. And of course, this class we're going to carry on with the discussion from last week. So we're going to look at the Chapter 7 discussions. And remember, log on 3 different days to post your 3 responses on that discussion. And I would like to see you do responses to responses. So if somebody posts a question on your page, you go ahead and respond. That's fine. That's still a response. Try to have a conversation. And I know we can't meet face to face, and it's hard to have a social environment online, but we have a good groundwork for it because we met in class, and most of you, I think, are pretty familiar with each other. So we'll get moving along. And so this week we're going to look at housing policies. And this is something that I find really interesting, partly because I moonlight in a homeless shelter that's set up for victims of domestic violence, and so we get to work with a very specific group of people, and try to do that. So it's an area that's really close to my heart, and is interesting to look at. So again, you'll read through the chapter. I hope you're enjoying this book. One thing I like about this book is it sets up very good historic context to what we have, and the authors do a great job of building on their story. So read chapter 8, and there's a couple of videos you're going to watch. 2 are associated with a Dropbox, and so you're going to watch a KCDC video and complete the Hope 6 Dropbox. So this is looking at a particular federal program that helps work with some community development. So I think you'll find this really interesting. And if not, it's not very long, so it should be very painless if you don't like it. But I find this kind of thing interesting when you're able to take an area and make some change in it. There is good and there is bad to that, and you get to look at that and discuss that. Then you're going to watch a video. It's about 28 minutes, and it's looking at Race, the Power of Illusion, looking at the idea of housing and how our housing is not always set up fairly. And in fact, it's pretty discriminatory in this country. The history for housing in this country is by no means fair, and hasn't been, and that leads to other issues like the accumulation of wealth. And so if you have large groups of people who are excluded from being able to purchase homes or buy houses in places that can escalate in value, you're going to have a compounding effect to that. And so again, there's a spillover from that issue. So that's looking at that. So what's the other effects of people having housing discrimination against them? And this video kind of goes back to really post-World War II and looking at how even things like the GI Bill were discriminatory until fairly recently. So then you're going to post 2 initial posts to discussion 8, and I have post and initial post, but I will fix that. So there's two different topics here, and of course I'll change this date as well. You're going to have the Chapter 8 quiz, and then you're going to start working on the presentation Part 2 Dropbox. And so all these assignments, except for the quiz and the presentation 2 Dropbox, are due the 8th at 4 p.m. I have some dates I have to change here, and I'll just go through what we have. Okay, so here is the Hope 6 videos, and you're just going to write 2 to 3 paragraphs discussing what other communities can learn from KCDC videos on Hope 6. So again, if you remember this term from the earlier videos in this class, is called outsight, when you're taking ideas from other places and using them for your own to see where you can grow or where you can turn back on. And this has a lot of implications with policy. Right now, as we're going through an issue with this pandemic, we could have used stronger outsight to lessen the situation we have in this country. So we could have said, well, this place did this and that place did this, and done some recommendations with that. We could have also used that to reject some ideas and have some policy decisions around that. But as we go on through things, you can see with a class in social policy, you can actually see where things are using outside, where they're not. It's an area of interest because you're able to see failures and successes in other places and try to avoid those. Just because something works in one place doesn't mean it will work in others. So, I mean, there is a bit of warning there that, what may have worked in one country to ameliorate a problem may not work in another place due to various reasons, such as cultural issues. But it's good to have that discussion and talk about it and see where things could have been better or where they were done right. So you're going to do this idea with Outsight, looking at housing. Then you have the discussion. I will fix this here to have both threads. So the discussions for module 8 are 2 questions. Let's see here. And I will have this fixed by the time you log on. Okay, module 8. So there are 2 questions. What have been the different causes of homelessness throughout U.S. history, and in what ways has the U.S. attempted to address this problem through social policy? So that's looking at a specific idea. How do we use policy to try to address an issue? The second one is, what is your biggest takeaway from the video, Race, the Power of an Illusion, how the racial gap was created? So I want you just to write about your biggest takeaway from that particular video. Try to tie it back to policy. It's interesting video. I used to use this video in my race and ethnic relations class, and I actually this year pulled it out and moved it to this class because I think it fits into this area beautifully. Then, of course, we have the Chapter 8 quiz. Presentation part 2. So you're going to pivot with your idea. So you discussed a social policy, a problem, and now you're going to propose a possible solution to this problem. And so you could take a policy and look for a gap or for an area that was wrong and discuss that. If you can't identify a particular policy that deals with your social problem, you could state that the lack of policy is indeed the problem that needs to be addressed by a policy. So you could say the lack of policy in dealing with this problem is the problem itself. I want you to also discuss the level that you want this policy to be enacted. So you need to propose it at an agency, local, state, or federal level. And again, you're seeing this right now with the COVID-19. As you watch, you could see different responses in different levels. If you're watching the news, you might see the president give a speech talking about suggestions and policies. Then you might watch a governor give a speech on suggestions and policies. And then you might watch a mayor give a speech on suggestions and policies. The suggestions are part of the policy. They might not be formalized, but the idea that they have expectations of you that might not have sanctions attached to them could still be a policy. That's what leadership is about. It's leading with expectations. Sometimes when there's a gap in the laws or there's a gap in what they think they can offer. In South Dakota, I noticed that our governor, frequently she says that she's doing what she can do, and her policy, she doesn't think she could basically move in the same direction that they're trying to do in some other states. And that could be on a cultural reason. But she also brings up it might be a constitutional issue. So we are dealing sometimes with uncharted waters and trying to see how to deal with stuff. But that might change. There might be different policy recommendations that come through. So, again, if you have any questions on this module, go ahead and send me an email, and I will get to grading your Dropbox, your policy presentation part 1 in the next 24 hours or so. and you'll have somewhere to go with that. I'm not going to really give much suggestions because I want you to kind of think about this. This is one of those areas where there's not really wrong answers. Unless I see something that's totally needs to be addressed, I'll probably just give you a grade for it and just move on with that. But if you have any questions, go ahead and send me an email. Generally, these are things that you thought about before and you just want to keep going with and having a discussion with. So get back to me if any questions, and take care of yourself. Thank you.